So Everhood 2 is set to come out March 4th of 2025. And if that doesn't excite you even a little bit, then you probably haven't played the first game. I mean, just look at this trailer. If you don't know anything about Everhood, well, it's essentially a rhythm game that's also an RPG and kind of a bullet hell. It's basically Guitar Hero, but if you were a little guy jumping around avoiding the notes instead of trying to hit them. And it has this wonderful story with fun topics like death.
I'm going to die!
So I played the original game and absolutely loved it. The story just really resonated with me. The game is about accepting death, and that immortality isn't really that cool. And while I'm obviously a fan and super excited about Everhood 2, I'm also kind of worried about it. So in this video, I'm gonna break down my two biggest concerns about the game, starting with the story. The first game had an odd but really interesting story that was fully concluded by the end of the original game. During this section, we're gonna be going over some spoilers, so if you still wanna play the game and care about that, skip to this time code. In Everhood, you are essentially an immortal being in a world full of other immortals. Everyone in this land has lived for billions and billions of years. So many years that many of them have fully learned skills like driving and just forgotten them, and then learned them again and forgotten them again. I mean, when you're living for an infinite amount of time, that sort of thing just happens, I guess. And as you play through the game, you kind of pick up on the fact that maybe this whole living forever thing isn't that great. So, you're tasked with going through and killing every last character in the game.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And the game makes it kind of questionable whether you're a villain or not, as most of the time you're taking these characters' lives against their will. So once you destroy everyone, including the universe itself, all the characters you killed eventually realize that you were actually trying to do the right thing, and you all reunite in this area in the game called the waiting room, which is essentially a purgatory between death and whatever it is that comes next. Here you get to talk to all your favorite characters one last time, and Zig.
My name is Walter. Cock and ball.
To me, it's a perfect, beautiful ending to a trippy game that just nails the point home of death not only being necessary, but actually being a positive in this context, which I just love. When I first played this game, I found a lot of comfort in that. And while I skipped over a lot of details here, the game has a nearly perfect conclusion, and if you've played Everhood before, you'd probably agree with me. And if you're watching this video, let's be real, you've probably played Everhood before. So to me, it would feel almost cheap to take that ending away by bringing back any of the characters the same as they were. The story kind of looks like it might be about what comes after death, and this is what the game kind of hinted at towards the end of the first game, which could be an interesting angle, but I'm just not sure how I feel about it. So I guess we'll see. My second concern is with the gameplay, which seems to be the exact same, almost. So the original game has a very simple gameplay loop. The gameplay loop consisted of three main elements: the overworld, the battles, and the minigames. The overworld part of the gameplay is just essentially the exploring, interacting with unique story moments, puzzles, and slight gameplay shakeups here or there. Like where this boss fights you without entering a battle to make the overworld into a more traditional bullet hell kind of boss fight. Or when you have to solve this little musical puzzle. Or the incinerator. These are all events that occur while controlling your character in the overworld of the game. I'm not really concerned about this bit of the game. If anything, it'll be more inspired than the original, I'm sure. The original game has a wealth of shenanigans that keep the story and exploration side of things feeling fresh throughout, and I'm sure they'll deliver again in that aspect. Next, you have the mini games like kart racing, jump rope, and Smega tennis from the first game. I'm also not too worried about these because they're just mix-ups to gameplay, and they're not really essential to the balance of the game. But the main gameplay loop is fighting enemies to some new original song where you need to dodge their attacks and eventually grab and shoot back their attacks at them. This always dealt a set amount of damage, and depending on the difficulty you have the game at, the difficulty only changed how much damage you took and how much damage the bosses needed to take to be beaten. I really loved the simplicity of the gameplay. I just hate playing a difficult game to over-level and find some really strong gear that makes the rest of the game a cakewalk. And I know I could just choose to make the game harder on myself by not equipping that item if it's too strong, but overall, I'm just not super into the concept of having equipment in this game. I like the simplicity of playing a game, enjoying a story, and not always needing to number crunch and test out different weapons. I mean, who knows? Maybe this will become my favorite part of Everhood 2, but right now, it's just not really the appeal to me, and it never was the appeal of the game in the first place. Myself and many other people fell in love with the first game for the story, charming world and characters, addictive, simple reaction-based gameplay, and because of this, I do feel like I would prefer them to focus more on fun story scenarios and interactions rather than the gear. But on the flip side, I mean, I could totally see it working out, especially since the original game definitely felt lacking in depth when it came to exploration, since it was a pretty linear game. If the second game is trying to focus more on open-ended exploration and the gear you find is a reward for finding these cool hidden secrets or maybe beating a secret optional boss, then I think it could honestly have a chance of improving the game, and I think it's likely that this is the case. Chris Norgren, co-creator of Everhood, had to say this about the game in a press conference. You can still subdue evil carrot mages, time cops, robust slime creatures, and all that good stuff to the dulcet tones of electronic psychedelic power rock, but there's quite a lot more discovery here. This makes me think that Everhood 2 is going down that more open-ended exploration kind of route, and I really hope it works out. When I played the original game, I never really felt much incentive to find secrets or do secret bosses, outside of just because it's really fun, since there's no in-game reward for doing them. I mean, games don't need rewards for playing the content if the content is just fun, but it is nice to get rewarded for doing difficult challenges in a game. And since they are having different weapons, I would really love if the different weapons change the gameplay somehow, rather than just being purely a DPS upgrade. They show these two different super attacks in the trailer that seems pretty cool, and I'm kind of hoping that that's tied to the weapon that the person is using as a way to mix up gameplay. Hey, so while I was editing this video, they actually released a demo for the game. So obviously I downloaded the demo and played it. I do think some of my concerns might be becoming a reality. When I played the demo, there was a lot of fighting the same enemy over and over. There's clearly a leveling system. And this game did feel like they're trying to make the gameplay more endless and almost time-consuming, and I'm not sure how it's gonna work out. I liked in the first game when you fought an enemy, it was almost always a story beat and it was an original song, and I don't know how I feel about fighting the same enemies and mobbing in a game like this. I think the actual gameplay has probably improved though. You can actually absorb like multiple attacks at once, and you kind of build up how many attacks you've absorbed, and depending on how many you've absorbed, you can do more damage. That's pretty cool. That adds like a risk and reward aspect to the combat system. You guys should play the demo yourself and kind of let me know what your thoughts are. The little story beats and cute interactions that were in the game so far are as interesting and fun as I remember the first game being, but yeah, I'm not super into the leveling. I loved the first game, and Everhood 2 is honestly one of my most anticipated games of 2025. If you're an Everhood fan, are you worried about the game at all? Let me know. And please leave a like if you liked the video. Thanks, you guys.